Good news. We got 100% participation. Good news. You back here, Connor? You hearing? What's the gospel mean? Good news. Yeah. So, good news that Christ has come. And last week we looked at them as they was passing unto the other side, that a storm arose and Jesus was in the ship sleeping, and he told them, he said, why are ye so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? But he did calm the storm, right? The winds abating, the sea, we see that. And tonight we'll be in the Gospel of Mark chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. And it reads, and they came over unto the other side of the sea into the country of Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tomb a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs. And no man could bind him, no, not one, with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces, neither could any man tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountain and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when Jesus But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshiped him. And he cried with a loud voice and said, what have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou tormentest me not. As soon as Jesus set foot on land, this man, a man which came out of the tombs, out of the place of the dead, a man that had an unclean spirit, a man that is possessed with demonic spirits and evil spirit. The demons possessed this man's body, who dwell among the tombs, among the dead. And the mountains cry, and he was in the mountains crying, body who dwell among the tombs, among the dead. And the mountains cry, and he was in the mountains crying out and cutting himself, tormented by the unclean spirit. The man would cry out in agony and in pain and in distress, cutting himself night and day. The man suffering was great, and there was no escaping the clutches of this unclean spirit. So we see this man that, like I said, as soon as he got off the boat, he came running. He's running to Jesus, and nobody could help him. Does it remind you of some folks in your life today? That there may be some that is in our life or in our community that it seems like they're helpless, that no matter what we do, no matter what the situation is, nobody can help him. They bound him with chains, they put him in shackles, and he just plucked them off. There was no restraining the man. They were unable to help him until the day they were unable to help him until the day the man saw Jesus. Until the day he saw Jesus. Now, we don't know, it says, but when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshiped him. Now, here's this man possessed. We don't know if the spirits did it. Maybe he did. And because we know that verse 7 says, and they cried out with a loud voice, saying, what have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I want to say to you, those spirits knew who he was. They already knew that Jesus was the Son of God. What have I to do with thee, with you? That's what the spirits cried out. Look at what verse 8 says through 13. For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. So we see the man coming. We see the spirits crying out. And we see Jesus here. We're just going to pause for a second. And he says, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, now this is Jesus, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. Now there was there nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding, and all the devils besought him, that is Jesus, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000 and were choked in the sea. What do you make of this? These first 13 verses. What do you make of that? Poor farmer, poor farmer. So it's a good thing. So what are you getting? What pops out to you here? Huh? Poor farmer, but blessed man. The spirits knew him. The men, and here's something that men could not do. They tried to help him. Could you imagine living among the dead, that you are living in a graveyard, and you're living and roaming the woods and the mountains, crying out day and night and cutting yourself? What pain is this man in? What's possessed him to do such things? And we see here that this Holy Spirit commentary, that Jesus asked the name of the unclean spirit, and he did not do this because he didn't know it. He did it for our sake. And remind you that Jesus is omniscient. He knows all things. But Jesus asked for us that we may observe the condition of this man. What was the condition of this man? Possessed. Of this man who lived among the dead, a man who wandered the mountains, possessed, controlled by the unclean spirits, crying out in torment. And there was no rest for this man. There was no peace for this man. His suffering was great. There was no escaping the clutches of this unclean spirit, these unclean spirits. The man resorted to cutting himself and trying to relieve the pain. He was in great perplex. But again, when he saw Jesus, he ran and worshiped him. And the demons cried out and gave him the name Legion, that we are many. The Son of God is able to do that which man cannot do. This man didn't have one issue, but he had many. He had many devices that was controlling him. A lot of times when you'll tell a high school student or middle school students, when you begin to talk to them and you begin to tell them that stay away from that first drink or that first toke or that first shot or that pill. Don't do those things because they will possess you. Sometimes even a young adult will just laugh But here's a man that is possessed. And a lot of things possessed him, whatever they may be. Those spirits possessed him and caused him to do things that he would not do. Who would cut themselves? Who would want to live among the dead? Who would want to wander the woods and have no hope? And Felicia said earlier, the poor farmer, right? He's lost his herd. And why did they choose? They didn't want to, I know they did not want to be tormented before their time, is what some of the other gospel says. But so Jesus allowed them, and they began to plead with Jesus to send them into the pigs, and they ran violently down into the sea, and they all choked, they all drowned. There was about 2,000 of them that did that. But look at what verse 14 through 17. And they that fed the swines fled and told it in the city. They're like, we're gone. We've lost 2,000 pigs in one day. We're going to flee. And they went and told it. It says they that fed the swines fled and told it in the city and in the country, and they went out to see what it was that was done. And they come to Jesus and see him, that is the man that was possessed with the devil, and had the legion sitting and clothed in his right mind, and they were afraid. And they that saw it told them how it befell to him that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine, and they began to pray him to depart out of their coast. These farmers, they didn't know what to think about it. They're doing their normal day routine, and Jesus shows up, and everything is turned upside down, and they go and tell it in the city and in their country. They came, and then those that heard this news, came to Jesus. They saw the man, right? They saw the man that was possessed, clothed and in his right mind, yet they asked Jesus to leave. Probably what was stated here, poor farmers, they lost some income. They've asked Jesus to leave, even though the man was healed and with the tormented spirits. They wanted nothing else to do with Jesus. Or maybe the swine market took a great dip that day. The market went low, and stocks were low, and the economy was low. We don't know. That was money. That's how they traded. That's how they bartered. That's how they provided. Even though Jesus probably could have did many more miracles and healed their sick, they wanted nothing to do with it. Even though they saw the man clothed and in his right mind, they wanted nothing else to do with who? So you know what? It's really, let's put it this way. There's some new Christians that come here, and it really bothers them. I wish they was here tonight, because they'll sit here and say that, well, I've had a hard week. Nobody seems to want to hear what I have to say. It's nothing new. Over 2,000 years ago, they did it to that man too. That man that was possessed. That man that was out of his mind. The man that cut himself. Where there was no hope. They did all they could do. Nobody can control him. Nobody could bound him. Nobody couldn't stop him. But Jesus did, and they see him in the right mind. They see him made whole, and they want nothing to do with Jesus. Isn't that kind of like our society today? We want to do everything else, but put Jesus where he needs to be. first over all. We don't want to do that. If we put Jesus first, if we do all things for the glory of God, how different would our nation be? But rather, we want to do what? Prescribe one more pill. Rather, we want to make drugs legal. Rather, we just want to promote unhealthy lifestyles and not come to Jesus. And we see that Jesus had the power. He didn't have to bind him. Jesus didn't have to, and this is a good thing for us too to realize, is that we don't have to go looking for folks all the time. Sometimes a Christian can do the same thing. It's just step into the place where God's placed you. And they know that you're a Christian and that it changes the environment. I've seen it. I've seen it done, right? From the laundromat to the work environment. It can be done. Knowing what you believe, others knowing what you believe can change the environment in which you are. He just spoke it. For he said, that's what it says in verse 8, come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. He commanded it. Not only that he told them, they pleaded with Jesus to be put into the swines, and Jesus did that. And we see that. He didn't have to go and touch the swines. It was just spoken. Look at what verse 14 and 17 says. And they that fed the swine and fled and told it to we're going to 17. And they that fed the swine and told it, the city, I done read that. So verse 18 and 20. And when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devil prayed him that he might be with him. This is very close attention. Pay close attention. Howbeit, Jesus suffered him not, but saith unto him, go home to thy friends, and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. The man that was healed, they didn't want nothing to do with Jesus, but the man followed him all the way to the ship. He was willing to leave, and he was praying, he was pleading with the Lord, let me come with you. I want to be with the man. I want to be with you who made me whole. Maybe he had fears that if he didn't hang out with Jesus, if he wasn't close to Jesus, maybe that legion and those spirits may what? Come back and he would be in worse situation. But our Lord had compassion on him. He didn't tell him to come on. They didn't want nothing with Jesus, and this is the same thing for all of us. Here's the thing that he wanted. He wanted that man that was made whole to go back and tell others what he has done for him. Go home to thy friends and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. The Lord showed this man mercy who deserved no mercy. The Lord appeared unto this man and healed this man, and now the Lord tells him to do what? To go and tell him what the Lord has done. Not what the man did, but go tell him what the Lord has done and how the Lord has showed compassion on him, healing him. So are we to do the same? Yes. We are to go and tell others about what Jesus has done in our life. They may not accept him. But here we see Jesus leaving this man to testify to others. And it's the same thing today. Jesus is with us. He will never leave us nor forsake us. But we are called to do what? To go and tell our friends, our families, and those that we come in contact with what things the Lord has done for you. Not what great things the church is doing, but what the Lord has done for you. Not what great things you've done for the Lord, but what the Lord has done for you. Not what someone else has done for you, but what the Lord has done for you. How He has showed you mercy. How He has showed you compassion. How He has showed you grace. How He loves you. That's what we were supposed to tell Him. A lot of times we don't do that, right? We get caught up in the moment of the day. We get caught, and I know there's more. We see this. We see that Jesus he had to go to the other side. Why did He have to go over here? I believe He knew that this man was in need of Him. Right? And Jesus gets in this ship, and remember, he's already ordained His apostles and the 12 disciples, and now He's taking them to the field to give them the experience and to show that, because last time the wind and the waves were beating up against the ship and the ship was about ready to sink, and He says, why are you fearful? Why do you have this lack of faith? And then they step off and they see what Jesus is doing here. And you know what? That'd be kind of fearful. I'd be amazed at what Jesus has done, and watching those 2,000 pigs go running down the mountainside into the sea to drown. And that this man that nobody could help, that he's sitting there and he's in his right mind, that you're actually having a conversation with a man that has not been spoken to, or a man that has not been able to have a healthy relationship, is sitting in his right mind. And here he is, not wanting to leave the Lord's side, but here he is clinging. There's two different things here. Here he is wanting to follow the Lord. So the question for the believer tonight is, are you following Him? He may not be physically present with you, but are you following His commands? Are you following His word? Are you telling your friends? Are you telling your family? Are you telling your co-workers the things the Lord has done in your life? Dayton, you can end the video. So do you have any questions? I'm turning this off.